very soft here. Why are you so soft? Okay. All right. Have you seen that before?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. All right, so I've been trying to work on that. All right,
Uh-huh.
pardon me?
Oh,
Okay, let's go to page in the Sifra Ditzniuta, and we're going to be on page Taf Resh Aleph at the back. And so now let me see if I can get this all up here. There are some notes at the bottom here that are fairly extensive. And we're at the bottom paragraph on the right column. It says Na'atik kan ktsas lashonas arizal le'inyanenu. Now what's the Inyan? The Inyan is Bia Rishona, the Abba Ve'ina Bebrias Olam. Now the whole thing is that since they're focusing us on Brias Olam, they still want to do that. I'm not sure how how I understand it in context of everything else. So he says now Bashar Mamari Rashby, he says some stuff over there. Vizel Lashona, he says I've already told you. Inyan Haku Ruchu the Shavak Baila. So this first yichud is in order to produce a kli. So now we're going to explain how it was up above the zivuga elyon the abba ve'ima when the ultimate that yichud takes place. The zivug tachna is their anpin v'nukfe. So you have these two yichudim. Keep it the chidas called zivug. Keep the chidas of zivug v'zichud v'ke'elu be'elu ashnei zivugim. Aniskarim sarach shedachida bebia rishona yaase kli benukva. So this concept, okay, we know the concept. We know the idea. This is the idea of binyamin or something like that. You're building up her yesod, something like that. But he said va'achakach izdavgu shenis. But then after that they have a second yichud. And the second yichud, shnia, lahodid tipo, to bring forth this tipa, l'sod iver I guess iver havlad. So he's a Rabanaska Mezivak Abba Ve'ima. So let's go from the yichud that takes place between Abba Ve'ima. He's a Kihinecha Kasher Abba Nizdavek Be'ima Bebiya Rishonda Kishanivra Ha'olam. Again, the phrase Kishanivra Olam. This is the very, very first Bia, he wants to say. Hanchil ba chad rucha the shavik ba bailo kanizka. So that's a phrase that we're familiar with. V'hu nimshach bebechinas adas, and it comes. This is a little bit different. So where's it come from? The tipa comes from the das asher ba'aba. In other words, the das of Abba is. We understand that the das of Abba would work because it would be the same as any das that says pulling between the chokhmah and the bin of the das. So into das, and so everything is coming from there. Uvazer boyer. Now we're explaining Masha Amra B'Sifra Tzniuta over here, B'Parshas Truma. He says over here. He says Asa Miftaka the Kalil Shis. So then he wants to say after this part where you make the kli and you place the sleeve in it. Now you have the tipa. He says now comes along this 6-pointed key. Let's say Pirush. Ki acha habir rishona the ava ve'iba kishenivra olam at the very beginning of this, when the world was created. Asa miftaka the kolil shus, then came along a mafteach, he calls it a key. Now the question is, a key is like it opens and closes things. That's the way I understand it. So he says asa miftaka the kolil shus. This is a zer anpin, koloshis citrin. Okay, so that's a metaphor for zer anpin. Comes along, but they call him zer anpin a key. Ein sham. So he goes into detail over that. Uvechein Reba Eitz Chaim, also the Vazal Shana Bedolok. He said, "Da shekal zivug b'zivug. Sheyesh ben be'ima be'bein benukva." We'll be talking about the yichudim and the female. In other words, what's going to be placed in the female. The menukva, the zer anpin, sarek techila lezavgam la'asos ba bechinas kli. So that's the first thing. It has to be made into a kli. V'achakach zivug base his amber v'holda b'mamet bechinas neshamos. Now he changes it. Before he said, well, he used the word vlad or holed. So here we're talking about now more specifically what in fact are you bringing out? what are you creating? And first he calls it a tipa. Now tipa is very is tangible. The word neshama, when you change it to neshamos, it's very less intangible. It's some kind of panemius. So what they have this yichud, and the yichud produces neshamos. So we've seen this. The shavig ba bailer and the chasalsa kli that the bailer put inside of her in order to make a kli. Kadei shetihi ru'uya lehis aviv l'kabel tipis hazocha b'socha ki acher bia rishonah, because after the first rishonah the brias ha'olam. Now again the brias ha'olam. So this is the whole thing of getting the ball started. Also miftakal the kol shis. So maybe he means to say that this is always brias ha'olam. I'm trying to understand what we're getting here is that. Okay, so anyway, I'll just drop that. Let's go on. Kaniska b'Sifra Zohar b'Sifra d'Tzidiyusa b'Parshas Truma v'huzer anpen a kolol vav kitzvos k'noida v'sasim, and this is the part where he wants to call it a key. The key goes into the lock, so to speak. V'sasim pischa de ima, and it closes up the opening of ima. Now, why would one want to say that? You want to say that the Vlad is born and is born out and produces a sham and it borns out. Here he says it stops it up. Ad kan. Ein shan ba'orech, so there's more on that. Od be'et chaim l'cholon sham. So let's come over here, and now we're talking about, we understand the grounds that we're traveling. Is this Bia Rishona? And let's go down to number bet. Bet goes right there at where it says the halon. We're going to see it later on. And now he's going to come over here and he's going to do it like this. Al pi hamavur b'divrei Arizal. Da'iri kan be'inyin bia rishona da'ava be'iba b'briyas ha'olam. Okay, so once it's stated, yesh lahavi kan od kama hakdamos. So he calls these introductions hanugos la'anyanenu that really pertain to this for Elohein. So here's the first one. Number Aleph, he says, Zaman Zivug the Bia Rishona, the time of the Yichud that takes place at the Bia Rishona Shazer Anpen. He says the time. Hoya Be'erev Shabbos, and now you want to talk about Brias Olam. So here we go. So he goes into it. It took place on the seventh day, Yom Zvav, the Maisa Bereshis. He was on Erev Shabbos, Yom Vav, the Maisa Bereshis, Ki Hinechem Bevur Be'etz Chaim Sham. So it explains over there in the Eitz Chaim. The zivug, the bia rishona, the yichud that takes place in the bia rishona, the kriya shemash alamita, which now we're going back to kriya shemal alamita, who could do zivug the bia rishona. It's similar to the bia rishona. Now let me go back over and say I thought I knew this, but I don't. The zivug the bia rishona, he said the kriya shema, so taking place at night when you're going to bed. Who madregas zivug the bia rishona. So that yichud right there is to make a klid the brias olam ansham. Now that yichud that's taking place at kriya shema, let's say kriya shema lamita, should be the yichud between Yaakov and Rachel, Yaakov and Leah. Over Shara Kavana, so over there in Shara Kavana, bir tikun zer anpe zer benuk, be'erev Shabbos Yom Vov. The Maisa Bereshis. Okay, so this is where the yichud takes place between Zohar and Nuk. V'sayim Shan, he says like that. V'zel l'shon ha'klal ha'ola mikol zeh. So the basic idea that comes from all of this, ki malsha na'asa be'erev Shabbat Bereshis na'asa ata b'kol lailo. So now the same thing, the making of a kli that took place there at that time is happening by us every night at Kriyas Shemal Amita Ad Kan. The Lahalon Shan, later on it says, Hevi B'kol Inyan the Bia Rishonach Aniska Be'etz Chaim Kan Ein Sham. So he has more of that. He says, Umuva B'kol Zeh, the Zivug the Bia Rishonah, that the Zivug that has to do with the first Yichud, the Brias Ha'olam Be'erev Shabbos Bereshis Rei Od Be'hemshech. Now he's going to go on and he's going to get into a little bit better detail. Let me see what I got here. Okay, let's do number bet. He says Zivug Zeh the zer anpin v'nukva choya l'mala b'chek abba v'ima. Now chek, isn't chek mean the palate? He says this yichud, so this is all together, like new ground for me. He says that the zivud that takes place once again, between Abba, takes place up above. I think we lost the Rebbe. I think we lost him here. I'm not sure where I lost him, but with God's help, he'll call me back. There he is. So this is Baruch here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, and I had a technical difficulty there, where I'm not sure why the camera starts bouncing all over the joint, and it became a problem. So let me see if I can find the place where I wanted to start. This is about where we started here, and we're starting to get some ideas about how creation, that's what he seems to be saying, actually occurs. So he says, right down here, this is a little print. I don't know how close I could get this and still have this working for me. Okay, let's see how that is. Let's see, line it up. Still not lined up good. That's the best I can do. It says, Va'ata, here we are. Zivug zer, the zer v'nukva, hoyel l'mala b'chek abba v'ima. So this is a fact that he wants to state. That this zivug that we're talking about now actually took place at the bosom of Abba v'ima. I'm going to call chek bosom. So we're going to get some details on this now. So let's go back this quote now. So he gives this rayo. The rayo is apparently, which is the gematria of Gevura, or the gematria of 3 times 72, which is the name of, it's a very high level name. Named Chochma, really, it's a Chochmadik. So this rayo is going to be put into the female aspect, in other words, a receptacle, and create a kli. This is from the Bia Rishona, but so the zivug ach ba'ach. But this zivug is not the formal zivug that takes place that we see over here in the time of the 3 weeks of the holidays that we're talking about, really, starting with Rosh Hashanah. Before it went up to the Hek Abba V'imba b'makom acher in another place, let's say he says, Ayin Sham Od Ki Zeh Iker Zivug Ach Ba'ach. The main Zivug is Ach Ba'ach is in the Hek, the bosom of Abba V'imba that they're taken up there. V'az Nizdam Go V'osa also Kli, and this makes this Kli. By using this rayo, we're able to do that. Ayin Sham. Ray Gamba Eitzchaim, look over there. He said the Zivug Arishon the Zer V'nuk. This first yichud that takes place between male and female, we're going into this in more detail. He said b'yom vav chazra hanukva lehizgala bebechina hagimel. So the nukva has different heights. Sometimes she's just a dot below her unpin, and sometimes she rises all the way up to the level of his head. But the normal place for the nukva zera anpin is at his chest. That's where she is. That's her height. He yosa parts of shalom bebechinas ach ba'ach. So now that she's actually complete parts of, with a rosh, a toch, and a sof. Neged the chaz of the zera anpin, and she's behind the chaz of zera anpin. Vaz biyom vav nizdavgu, and that on that day, the 6th day. They had the yichud then, the zer anpin v'nukva bebechinas ach ba'ach, but their yichud was only for the purpose of creating a kli, which is what he's saying, is this ach ta'ach, ayin sham. Rebbe Yofashah, there's more than Yofashah, the zibazeh, choya, zer anpin, nigdal, that is, zer anpin grew. Kavar bebechinas yud gibel sham of yom echad. This is another phrase that needs really to be thought about what it meant. What happened here? I got more problems. What's going on here? Okay, so I'm not sure exactly. This is the recording that we're putting in. So let's go on a little bit here. He says, so this is also the concept of Zer Anpin being 13 years in a day, and the Nukva and Malchus being behind Yud Beis Shana V'Yom Echad. Now, that's a whole Inyan about, it's something to look at over there to see what they could be talking about. So let's look over here and do the best we can with this small print. Lacha the zivug the bia rishona. So now he says like this, something else you need to know. It's a hakdama. He says this is an introduction. Before you have to know about the via rishona, the abba ve'ima, la'asiyas kli, for that person, that purpose. Hoya zivug noisim, there's another zivug that takes place after that. Laholeda, for giving birth, the neshamos, but giving birth to what? To neshamos, to the panemius of that we human beings have a panemius, and our bodies are grown around them. That's the same thing in all of Kabbalah. The Gemara Shebir Be'etz Chaim is explained in the Eitz Chaim Sham. V'zal Shana ki zivug rishon the brias olam the Abba ve'ima hoya kafel. There were two yichudim that took place. But the chida she'asach of a kli, the first thing they made a kli v'achakach noisin bo. They placed into her the tipas of Av, which is the name of Gematria 72, Yud Vav Dalad Ke Yud Vav Yud Vav Yud Vav Ke Yud, spelling out the name of Avaya that way, represents Chachma. It's a very high level tipa. The Kli Zeh Nikra Bia Rishona, so the making of this Kli is then called the first Bia, Ad Kan. Ayin Shad V'Hidech Tipa Zul the Choleda. Now this tipa that we're talking about that has to do with giving birth, the bechinas neshamos. It's on the level of purely spiritual form. That says explains it over there b'sham ubechinas haperek. But then shachas the zer v'nuk, and then it extends down to zer anpin and the nukva. Shenenasro, that it become removed. They become separated. They were born together, and now they're going to be separated. And this happens as a result of Ima directly going into the nukva instead of going through Zer Anpin for the nukva. She goes directly and builds her up. So now, but the Sheninasru, they become independent, but they're still standing ach ba'ach, with their backs to each other. Where are they? They're at the place of the chek of Abba Ve'ima, the bosom of Abba Ve'ima. V'mena nolad Adam Arisha. Now he said this a fact. This yichud in the chek of Abba Ve'ima, which is a yichud of ach ba'ach, produces a kli, this is my interpretation, a kli called Adam Arishon, kashuhu bebechinas ach ba'ach, and he's created from that original yichud of ach ba'ach. He is the kli that will hold the light, the neshama. Over there, he said, ki choyet sorek livro as Adam avachava. They had to be created. My asa Abba Ve'ima. So what did their parents do? That is, the Chochman Bina, what did they do? Nasru as a nukva, they removed the nukva from the back of Zer Anpin. Ha'omedes achre Zer Anpin. V'achar kach ha'ala Zer v'nuk. And then after the removal, she was removed, then they are drawn up through the power, of course, of the Ein Sof Baruch Hu is manifesting this in Abba Ve'ima. And Abba Ve'ima had the power, therefore, to be able to pull the Vim on the Nasrim, the Malav, which are now independent Partsufim. Behechel Abba Ve'ima Atzman, they go into the palace, which we're calling the bosom of Abba Ve'ima, Shesham Ein Koch LeKlipos, because there's no power for the Klipos. They Aches Ba'achrech and the Nekeva to be able to get a hold of the Nekeva. V'sham yochlu lachzor panim b'panim, and because of the fact they're in a safe place, they're able to go face to face. V'sham nizdavku zer v'nuk v'yachad, and then we see that they completely made a yichud together. V'achakach yardu zer v'nuk v'chabemekom l'mata. So now after this yichud takes place, and what he's saying over here is that Adam and Rishon is created. That is, Adam and Rishon is male and female. He is created at this. This is the kli. But then they have to go back to their position, because that's not the place of Abba Ve'ima in the chek of of Zohar Benok, is not in the chek of Abba Ve'ima. That's not where they belong. So kanal. But now with them still being back to back, now down below, she's in a lower world. What world is she in? Well, they're in the worlds of Yetzirah and Asiya, because that's where they normally are the Zohar V'not. He says, and they gave birth to a neshama that comes from this tipa of 72 that we said before, Ad Kan. Now, he said, V'hine, Kokol zel hoyanase gam came beyond vov the Maisa Bereshis. All of this action also took place at the 6th day of creation. Okum bevura be'etz chaim is explained over there. Chanal v'zech l'shon v'oz biyom vov nizdavgul zer v'nok. So now on this day, you had a yichud that takes place between the male and the female bebechinas ach ba'ach. There, right? That's what we've been talking about. V'nivra Adam Rishon, and from that yichud that took place at the bosom of Abba ve'ima, which is the bosom of Chochmah Bina, that bringing these two lower male and female aspects into that area causes a yichud, and it makes Adam Rishon, and it comes out where he's just a kli. Michu tzaruk lahosiv kan, but you have to add on here Sifra d'tzniut. So now he has a contradiction here. He said beperikin that we're talking about here in our parak. Well, I read the whole latest Adam Rishon. It's not talking about that. He's talking about something else. Other bezivuk the kli the bia the Rishon. That's the whole subject. Not that the original kli is going to be Adam Rishon. That's at least what he's saying here. But what we're talking about is just the development of a kli. He said, it's Chaim explained over there, Babir in Miftika the Koloshis with that idea. V'yesh Levoyer, now I want to explain like this. The Chaim the Bishum, the Perik Kama, the Sifra the Tzniut, and we won't explain this. The first parak of the Sifra the Tzniut, the Ayrecha Betikun Zer V'nukva Gereda. So normally it's just talking about the tikkun that is necessary to bring yichud about with them. Begam zivin the kli hu tikkun shel hamshachas mochin, but he wants to say something else. That not only is it making a kli, he said v'gam the zivug the kli, the yichud that takes place by the kli, tikkun kol hamshachas mochin l'kol hakuma. It also is making it possible for the hamshacha, the tipa, to go through the entire kli. In other words, from the rosh, which is the chabad, to the sof, which is the malchus. So that's all in Eitz Chaim. This kli is not only in the yesod. But they're actually mochim that spread. It's not just a kli, but it's inside the kli. It sounds like he's saying it's not a separate yichud. It's a part of the first yichud, and that with the kli also comes something like this, maybe. So he says that also the light from the original part is spreading now down through the walls. Now that sounds like a second yichud, but maybe it's not. Because the kli, when you make the kli, it's not down. In other words, it's the kli of the yesod, which is the base, ultimate base kibbul. But actually the mochin inside of the two. Bakal kumas abba v'chabina, all kumas abba, and also chabina, which is malchus, which is the ima. Bakal kumas zer anpin, and the whole height of zer anpin, it goes all over there. Bakal kumas nukva, and it spreads all to all of them. So the original yichud is saying something like this: is that when the yichud is made to produce a kli, that it also produces light that fills up all of the rest of the parts of. And that's the final line, is that he wants to say that it doesn't have anything to do with the birth of Adam Rishon. Okay, so let's start over a number bet.